Welcome to Dorcas Fashion Academy and our part 2 of our Harry Potter sorting hat. Don't forget that this pattern is on sale at our Etsy shop.
So now we're going to start sewing. You can either attempt just to sew it directly, or you can pin. For the beginners, I suggest you put some pins in, because maybe by the time that you get round you have an excess of felt. So at least every quarter you can place a pin, and we place our pins sideways so we can sew over them gently. And this bit here, the outside, has to be sewn completely. You don't have to leave a gap. So you can start at any point, and we're going to sew at 0.8. And this sewing machine has the ability to move the needle. So if you measure from the edge of your presser foot, you can move the needle slightly and it'll sew round about 0.8. It doesn't really matter. If you want to sew at the width of the presser foot, it's fine. I don't think it makes any difference. So we start with a couple of reverse stitches and then continue all the way round and sew. As you can see, we can go over the pins slowly because they are across. If they're straight down, you have to be removing pins as you go along, and that actually defeats the object of having more fabric coming from the top and ending up with a pinch at the end. So now this is done, and we can turn it the right way round and press it, and we'll turn it through the inside hole, which is this one. It's not difficult, just turning it the right way round, pushing gently. Try not to make the hole in the center too big because it's felt, and you can stretch it. Actually, we would normally press it, but I'm thinking that we're not going to press it because I like the look of it being a bit fluffier, especially because the boning that's going to be inside isn't going to make it completely out. So I think we're going to leave it as it is for now. So now we're going to sew the crown. The crown, we're going to have to sew it together and then press it. Obviously, it would be so much better if we could sew it overlapped, but it's going to be quite difficult to get this on the sewing machine. So I'm going to sew it and then press it flat. Now we're ready to attach our crown to our brim, but before we do that, we're going to insert our boning. Now the boning is really simple, and as I mentioned before, it's not to stretch the hat out, it's just so to give it a bit of stability. And all we need to do is in there, stick it in, and keep it out of the way. But take the two ends, like this, making sure that they're not twisted or anything, and put some tape. This is just so it just doesn't move around and start becoming smaller or bigger. Because since it's wrapped in a roll, it could tend to do that. All right, first tape in. Okay, so as you can see, this is just in there, it's lying in there, it's doing nothing. So now we're ready to put our brim onto our crown. Now it gets a little bit tricky because this is very hard, and although this is soft, it's got the boning inside. And I want to have this seam facing out, and I want the seam allowance to be facing out as well, because afterwards we're going to cover it with the face. So it gets a little bit tricky to be able to attach because you're going to have all the boning in here. So I'm going to very carefully try to turn this the way around. That's better. So now it's so much easier for me to attach this to this in this manner. But first of all, I'm going to pin my 4/4 together. I'm doing this so that they don't slip. You can always do a machine stitch all the way around, and that would keep them together, but I don't need to do that. And then we've got our notches here, remember? So all we need to do is match up our notch with our pin. Now I'm going to pin on the pelform side because it's stiffer, and it's going to be easier to sew on this side as opposed to on this side because of the stiffness of the pelform. I'm matching up my quarters. This pattern actually matches very well. Normally they do. The curve of the hat and the brim. But sometimes you need to do a bit of manipulation, but not in this one. Also depends on the fabric that you're using. So once you have your quarters done, if you feel that you need to, you place a pin in the middle of your quarters. This makes it easier to sew with all the stiffness that you have here. Okay. So as you can see, this fits well around, and I'm going to sew on the inside. It can be a bit tricky, but don't worry about the boning because the boning is flexible. So it's more that you need to get your both fabrics and your pelform together. And also don't worry too much if it gets a pinch or something, because it's not important. It's a difficult, tricky seam, so you just have to make sure that you can sew all 3 layers together. Okay, so our brim and our hat is sewn. I'm just going to check it just in case I've left anything out because it can slip. It doesn't look like it. So now I'm going to bring the brim, the crown out. So I can press this a little bit and press this as well. And this is really what's going to hold the structure of the hat. This is the size of your head, or my head in this case. And this is what holds it on the top of your head, as opposed to with the sorting hat being so big and bulky, it'll land up to our eyes. which is fine if you want it just to muck about, but if you want to wear it as a costume, I think that you need it to be supported in your head. So I'm going to press this, and then we're going to start with the face. So now we're preparing the face. Now, these are the marks that we drew previously, and we have to sew this cord, and it's that to accentuate the eyebrows and the eyes and whatnot. So I've got some brown thread, and we're going to do a ladder stitch. I'm going to start here at the bottom, and what we don't want to is totally close this like in a point. We take a stitch at the top, then come across. Where you land across, you take another stitch. You see, you go like over. This some people call it a slip stitch, some people call it a ladder stitch. It doesn't really matter what you call it. The idea is to enclose the cord as we go pulling the thread, as you can see. And this is what we're going to do in each of these pieces, except this one. This one's just a fold. So before I pull this, I want you to look at one thing, and it's that this bottom part of the mouth is not aligned with this. So it's purposely done like, so it's like it creates like a smirk. So it's fine that it doesn't match. So I'm going to pull so that you see what happens. As you can see, the cord gets enclosed, held in there, and a little stitch at the end. And if you do this knot, this is the one we use in the school, which is you sticking your needle, get the thread that's coming out of the fabric, 1, 2, 3, and it creates a knot. That's number 1 done. I'm going to continue doing all of this, and then we'll put the mouth together. Okay, so now this is the back bit, and we need to know where the top upper lip finishes. So I'm going to put a pin here.
So I will take these 2 off and fold the upper lip. And what we want to do is join the upper lip with the lower lip with the cord. And you will notice that one is longer than the other, but that doesn't matter because that's the whole point to make the mouth. And here what we want to do is overlap the eyebrows on top of the eyes.